Hey y'all, wanted to do a bankroll themed video. I get a lot of bankroll type questions, and I generally never have a good answer for them because knowing exactly how much someone else should bet is kind of like an impossible question to really answer, and also you don't want to direct someone down a road that they shouldn't and lose actual large amounts of money. So I kind of avoided making any sort of bankroll type of video. But Manny Laura, he streams on Twitch under M Laura. Check him out if you haven't. Had a video today about a video Nicholas Taleb posted on YouTube. I'll get to it in a little bit, but John Gustafson has asked me to do something on this, so I figured I'd give my 2 cents on how much theoretically one should bet. So I brought up my old spreadsheet for the how many times you should enter GPP video I did a while ago, just to use that kind of four bucket category for DFS players. And I realize every DFS player is like a snowflake and they're all different, but just to make things simple, we'll just use these four categories again. And the word that always comes up in gambling and DFS sports betting is Kelly, right? The Kelly Criterion is the optimal amount one should bet. And what does that mean, and how should we use it? So I want to go over Kelly quickly, and I think the best article that I've seen on it, and it's simple, is at Daily Roto. Colin Drew, look at that handsome fella. He wrote it, so go check it out. I'll link it in the description, and I'm not going to read all of it, but we'll go over some of it. The Kelly Criterion is a tool used to help determine how much to bet when you have an edge over the house or another player. So the Kelly is trying to figure out the optimal amount. That's the key here. Of if you theoretically, with all these inputs of edge and rake and how many opponents you're playing against, what would be the maximum bet amount that you should place given a certain bankroll that would make you the most money over time. So if you could just think about that for a second, like that would be extremely risky, right? Because you are betting the absolute maximum possible given these inputs, right? So like if it goes wrong, you could go broke very quickly. Now, you could here also I could link this. This is a Kelly calculator for free that you could play around with, but the bottom line with Kelly for me is I wouldn't even bother with it, right? You could read this article and go, more in depth if you want. But the reason I wouldn't is because the game is constantly changing, and estimating your edge is really hard to do. The rake is constantly changing. How many opponents are in each event it's just a lot of work to figure out. Something you could kind of ballpark, in my opinion, anyways, assuming you're a profitable player. So I would honestly just skip the Kelly Criterion and just use some basic rules of thumb. And actually, in Colin's article, he says something really similar. There is no rule that could determine how a DFS player should allocate their bankroll. Let's go to the last sentence here. For profitable players, these principles would suggest playing 1% to 10% of your bankroll in cash games on any given slate. And in my experience, I would say that's dead on right. So to go back over to the spreadsheet, and I've added a few categories over here for each bucket of players. And my general guidelines would be, so I just made up a $10,000 bankroll, would be if you're one of these winning players that enters everything, 10% is I think a reasonable amount to invest. Again, those guys are probably not watching my videos anyways, and they know what to do. And even 10%, you in being a winning player, you could still go broke. And I know it's surprising because people want to. At least maybe I just hang around with a lot of gamblers, but they want to gamble a lot more than they probably rightfully should. And now we're going back to the average player, 5%, and I don't really care if it's cash games or GPPs or a mix of both. But I think if you're betting around, if you're a player who can beat the rake, sometimes you're winning. You generally, overall, maybe you're right around a few points ROI gained, and you're doing the same things I suggested in the initial GPP video, where you're contest selecting and maybe looking for overlay to cut your rake down, or bonus hunting a little bit to get those extra couple points of ROI. 5%, unless you run really bad, should probably be suitable. And then the not sure, you're going to want to be in like a 1 to 5% range. I just put down 2.5, because and this goes along with the losing player. If you are a losing player, and then there's no strategy that can help you. The less you bet, the slower you'll go broke. That's a good thing, I guess. Maybe theoretically you could learn. That'll give you enough time to learn to become a profitable player. And if you bet more, you won't give yourself a shot at even learning the game. So there is an argument for betting less. But really, if you're a losing player, you shouldn't be betting at all. Unless it's for enjoyment, like entertainment purposes, like going to see a movie or something like that, and you don't care. So you're going to want to stick. I would, these would be my recommendations to about like 2.5%, somewhere around there. And the losing player, I would say, the same strategy I suggested in my initial GPP video, which is just one or two entries, and try to bank to pay for your gambling entertainment expenses for the rest of your life, or get lucky and put a down payment on a house or something. If you're not going to put the time and effort into it. So back to the Nick Taleb video. So Taleb is popular in DFS circles because he was in one of John Bale's books. I don't remember which one, but that was kind of his thesis of how he wanted to play DFS, was this anti-fragility concept that Taleb talks about in Black Swan. And he might have talked about it in Fooled by Randomness briefly. I can't remember. But the idea is it says here, an ability to benefit and grow from a certain class of random events, errors, and volatility. So the idea in DFS would be to take lower owned guys, and when random events occur and there's a lot of volatility, you will do better. And especially with the top-heavy GPP structure, anti-fragility is basically just contrarian. And so he's kind of talked about highly in a lot of DFS circles. He is also kind of a wacky guy. If you watch any of his speeches and whatnot, he is not an economist. He was a trader. And I think he had a couple big years and wrote some of these books. And I think he was an academic for a little bit as well. And so in this YouTube video that he posted today, he talks about a concept of, along the lines of using Kelly, that you could go broke even when you're a favorite. And I don't think this is super groundbreaking. Of course, if you are a favorite and you bet too much of your bankroll and things go wrong, you could go broke after one or two bets. And there is another concept I looked at. I couldn't find. I read this years ago, and I couldn't find. I couldn't find it after I briefly searched on Google. Was in the lottery, like the Powerball, the nationwide lottery, the odds can actually be in your favor, even though the lottery's a sucker bet. Generally speaking, sometimes the Powerball could get so large that the odds of winning the Powerball are less than the payout. So, let's just say it's a 1 in a billion shot. I'm just making numbers up, but let's say it's a 1 in a billion shot to win the Powerball, but there's $2 billion in the kitty, right? You have, forget taxes for a second, but you have odds to, it's a plus EV bet. But no one on the planet has the bankroll to actually make that bet properly, right? Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos shouldn't even be making that bet, even though it's only whatever it is, $5 or a couple bucks to make that bet. Theoretically, if they were using Kelly, they wouldn't do it because they could go broke, if that makes sense. So you don't even need some, concept like I think that Taleb's talking about here. And also, you could see by this note here that this isn't about Taleb he's an egomaniac, and this is not about teaching you guys about Kelly. This is about his beef with Richard Thaler, who's a economist at the University of Chicago. He won the Nobel Prize last year or 2 years ago. He's a behavioral economist in the vein of Kahneman and Tversky. They wrote Thinking Fast and Slow, and so those are two books that I would recommend for gamblers. Just Thinking Fast and Slow for biases, personal biases, and Taleb's Fooled by Randomness for superstitions that can creep up on you if you gamble a lot. But yeah, you could see here that Thaler tweeted out, "This is NT hogwash." So Nicholas Taleb, he's saying Nicholas Taleb's hogwash here because you can't explain why people turn down a 50-50 bet when they're offered $110 to $100, right? So in Thaler's research, if you offered someone a coin flip with odds at $110 to 1.1 to 1, they turn it down because they don't want to lose $100. They're adverse to it, and so he's saying, this is the type of research behavioral economists do. And so he did this Kelly video to dispute him. I don't know if I'm allowed to play this. I don't even know if it'll record actually. But he says here, at what mark am I at? 7:45. He goes, he says Thaler, everything Thaler does is BS, and it's like, come on, man, he just won the Nobel Prize. And clearly, at a 50-50 bet, you should be betting 110 to lose 100. And here's another thing that Taleb doesn't talk about too, is, and this is applicable to DFS, is and I'm not recommending this, but theoretically, you could go. You might want to go broke. So like Bob Voulgaris, the professional NBA bettor, or at least he was. I don't know if he's still doing it. He had like an $80,000 bankroll in the early 2000s and bet it all on the Lakers to win the championship. And that payout was like 4 or 5 to 1 or something. Got him enough of a roll to quit his job and move and gamble for a living. And now he's got multi-million dollar bankroll or net worth or whatever you want to call it. So for a guy who, if you have $100,000 a year job and you like playing DFS and maybe you want to make that your career or something, and you're willing to invest $5,000 and you don't care if you go broke in that $5,000, you might be wanting to take chances, right? So like, to go back to the spreadsheet, you might want to go higher than these because you don't really care if you go broke, right? And you never know too. Like you could let's say you wager $2,000 of your $10,000 bankroll one day in a high stakes GPP, and bank, that could change your life. So the kind of summing up my initial problems with recommending any sort of bankroll guidelines is because you can't really tell. I have no idea what your edge is. I have no idea what your goals are. You might not even know what specifically what you want to do. But I think it doesn't hurt to at least like check out Colin's article, and maybe work through the math if you really want to, just to kind of get a feeling for it, and maybe follow these these guidelines might be good for checking in and how much are you betting every day. And I would guess a lot of people are much higher than this. Again, I might be biased with hanging around with too many gamblers, but I feel like they're gonna feel that this is pretty nitty. But I think the math would suggest that you should be pretty nitty. And the more you play like this average GPP strategy that I recommend, where you're avoiding the pros, seeking out bonuses and overlay, and contest selecting, you're going to be able to gamble more, longer, and for a longer period of time, and maybe learn to get into this upper bracket. Who knows? I think that kind of sums up everything. Hopefully, I remember to put all these articles in. Colin's a really sharp guy, so make sure you check this one out. If there's any other questions, let me know. Have a good one.